The most powerful beliefs you hold are the ones you've never once chosen to examine. You inherited them, and they've been running your life ever since. You woke up this morning and made 100 decisions without thinking. What to wear, what to eat, how to greet the people you live with. You assumed those were your choices. They weren't. Every preference you think is yours was placed there by someone else. Every value you defend was handed down before you could spell your own name. This is the invisible script. It tells you what success looks like. It tells you what kind of person deserves love. It tells you what you should be ashamed of. And you've never questioned it because you didn't know it was there. Let's find it. The first writers of your script were your parents. Not through lectures, but through what they celebrated and what they ignored. When you brought home good grades, what happened? When you failed, what did their silence teach you? Children don't learn from what you say. They learn from what you react to. A raised eyebrow writes a paragraph. A sigh writes a chapter. If your mother was anxious about money, you learned that security is fragile. If your father worked constantly, you learned that rest must be earned. If they fought about certain topics, you learned those topics were dangerous. These lessons didn't come with explanations. They came with feelings. And feelings, you learned, are not to be questioned. Then came school, the first place where strangers began editing your script. You were sorted. Gifted or slow, athletic or awkward, leader or follower. Labels assigned before your personality had even finished forming. You were taught to raise your hand before speaking, to wait for permission, to move when the bell rang. You learned that authority decides when you eat, when you rest, when you think. This wasn't education, it was installation. And you didn't resist because everyone around you accepted it as normal. Normal is the most powerful word in any script. Whatever is normal becomes invisible. Whatever is invisible becomes mandatory. And then there were the other children. They taught you what would get you rejected, what would get you laughed at, what would make you invisible in the worst way. You adjusted yourself to survive. You hid the parts they wouldn't accept. You performed the parts they would. And after enough years, you forgot which was which. Above it all, there was culture. The water you swam in without knowing it was water. Movies showed you what a hero looks like. Advertisements showed you what happiness requires. News told you what to fear. Social media showed you who you should envy. None of this announced itself as programming. It announced itself as entertainment, as information, as just the way things are. And so the script thickened, layer by layer. Your parents' anxieties, your teachers' expectations, your peers' judgments, your culture's myths. All of it settled into your nervous system and called itself you. Now let's look at what the script actually contains. There are beliefs about what you deserve. If you grew up being told you were too much, you learned to make yourself smaller. If you were told you weren't enough, you learned to perform more. These beliefs don't announce themselves. They operate through a vague sense that something is wrong with you, a background hum of inadequacy you've stopped noticing. There are beliefs about what counts as success. Money, status, the right career, the right postcode. You may say you don't care about these things, but notice how your body feels when someone your age achieves them and you haven't. That contraction in your chest. That's the script speaking. There are beliefs about love, that you must earn it, that you must be useful to receive it, that if you show your full self, you'll be abandoned. Where did that belief come from? Probably from the first time you showed yourself fully and were met with withdrawal. There are beliefs about emotions. Which ones are acceptable and which ones are shameful? If anger was punished in your home, you learned to swallow it. If sadness was dismissed, you learned to perform happiness. If fear was mocked, you learned to never show uncertainty. These emotional rules are running constantly, filtering what you allow yourself to feel, filtering what you allow others to see. And there's the deepest layer of all: shame. Not guilt, which says you did something bad. Shame, which says you are something bad. Shame was installed to keep you in line, to make you police yourself so others wouldn't have to. It's the most efficient control mechanism ever designed. You become your own prison guard. Here's what makes this terrifying. The script doesn't feel like a script. It feels like you. It feels like your personality, your preferences, your common sense. When someone challenges a belief you've held since childhood, you don't feel curious. You feel attacked. Because the belief has become load-bearing, remove it, and something might collapse. This is why most people never examine their script. It's not laziness. It's protection. If you truly questioned your definition of success, you might have to change your life. If you questioned your beliefs about love, you might have to leave someone. If you questioned your shame, you might have to feel it. And feeling shame fully, without resistance, is one of the hardest things a human can do. So, we avoid. We distract. We stay busy. We call the busyness productivity, and the productivity meaning. And the script keeps running. But some people do examine it, usually after something breaks. A career they sacrificed everything for feels hollow when they get it. A relationship they poured themselves into ends, and they realize they don't know who they are without it. A health crisis forces them to ask, what actually matters? These are the cracks where the light gets in. The moment someone asks, wait, why do I believe this? Who told me this was true? What if they were wrong? This question is the beginning of consciousness, not intelligence, consciousness. The awareness that there's a difference between the thinker and the thoughts, between the person running the script and the script itself. Most people live their entire lives without ever experiencing this separation. They are their script. The separation feels like waking up inside a dream you didn't know you were having. It can be disorienting, sometimes terrifying. Because if you're not your beliefs, who are you? If you're not your conditioning, what's left? This is where the real work begins. You examine each belief like an archaeologist sifting through layers. This belief about money, where did it come from? This belief about my body, whose voice was that originally? This belief that I don't deserve rest, who installed that? You trace each one back, to a parent's anxiety, to a teacher's offhand comment, to an advertisement you saw 10,000 times before you were 10. To a single moment of humiliation you'd almost forgotten. Each one was deposited without your consent, and each one shaped your trajectory more than any choice you've consciously made since. Here's the liberating part. Once you see a belief as installed rather than inevitable, you can question it. Once you question it, you can test it. Once you test it, you can keep it or discard it. Not because someone told you to, but because you chose to. This is what it means to author your own life. Not to reject everything you were taught, but to choose deliberately what to carry forward. Some scripts are worth keeping. Maybe your family taught you to value loyalty, and that still serves you. Maybe your culture taught you discipline, and you'd choose it again. The difference is that now it's yours, because you examined it and chose it. But let's be honest about what happens when you start this process. People will resist you. Not because they're bad, but because your change threatens theirs. If you question the family's definition of success, you imply theirs might be wrong. If you step outside the culture's expectations, you mirror their captivity. They will call you selfish. They will call you lost. They will call you ungrateful for questioning what they never questioned. This is the cost of consciousness. You trade the comfort of belonging for the integrity of truth. You lose some relationships. You gain ones that fit who you're becoming. And slowly, something shifts. The vague sense of wrongness lifts, because you no longer measure yourself against a standard you never agreed to. The shame begins to loosen, because you see it was never yours to begin with. It was installed to serve someone else's fear. You were just the carrier. This doesn't mean blaming your parents. They were also running inherited scripts. They passed on what was passed to them. Trauma echoes through generations until someone stops and turns to face it. You can be that someone. Not by fighting the past, but by no longer letting it write the future. Most people will live and die inside a script they never knew existed. They'll achieve goals that were never theirs. They'll chase feelings that were promised but never delivered. They'll wonder why success feels empty and love feels conditional. And they'll never know it's because they spent their lives performing someone else's story. You're now aware. That changes everything. Or it changes nothing. The choice is yours. For the first time, genuinely yours. The script will keep running, but now you know the author's name.